you are going to find out 5 end time signs in today's video. If this is your first time here, welcome to the channel. My name is Israel and we make videos to help you avoid deception while mastering your Bible at the same time when watching our videos. And you can click the thumbs up button just below the video to show your support. So the 5 signs I'm going to share with you in regards to the end times and the last days come from the New Testament book called 2 Timothy. Number 1 may arguably be the most vital because it basically sets the scene for the whole scenario. The first thing it says in regards to the last days being upon us is Paul is writing to Timothy and he says, "This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come." So just to make sure you're following along with me, perilous times, for example, are things like huge safety risks and extremely dangerous or severe scenarios. Kind of like what we've been experiencing this current year for the most part worldwide, where many of us for the whole year have basically been indoors for the whole time. Now, the fact of the matter is this is an example of perilous time. Whether you believe one way or the other way in regards to why we've had to actually stay indoors for pretty much the whole year, one of the things Paul basically sets the scene with is you are going to be entering into some of the most dangerous times. The fact of the matter is, if you listen to those on the news, they will have you believe that we are in a extremely detrimental, dangerous time period where if we don't take the right precautions, we may as mankind come to regret it in the long run. Now, on the flip side, you may not listen to mainstream news. You may be listening to what many of those same news outlets will be calling conspiracy theorists. And either way, whatever you believe about this current situation, this is a sign of perilous times. There was like a whole year where it was news report after news report after news report pretty much weekly of another young child's life being actually taken through gang crime. You could literally leave your house, just be going anywhere, and that could have been the last time your parent actually saw you alive, right? And the knife and gun crime at the particular time seemed to be skyrocketing every single week. It was almost like one knife crime here begat another knife crime there. Now, the fact of the matter is that is very perilous in many ways, because if you're a child and you know you may leave your house and you may never return to your house because maybe you are in a gang dispute, or maybe you have nothing to do with gangs and you're just going to be someone caught in the crosshairs or the crossfires. These are what we reference as perilous times. And I have to say this, another extremely dangerous scenario are the 50 million babies every single year who get terminated, mostly for convenience. The second sign of the end times that Paul gives us in 2 Timothy in this particular passage is the self-lovers, the boasters, and those that are basically into covetousness, which is ultimately idolizing and desiring what other people have. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy. Now, we've gone through multiple phases in the last 10 to 20 years. We went through the Photoshop phase where everything needed to be touched up and look shiny and look great and look perfect. We went through the Instagram phase, which was like the Photoshop phase 2.0 with filters, where everything has to look great and then it has to be filtered to look even better. We also went through the woke phase where you have to be in the know, you have to be in the knowledge. And if you're not in the knowledge, then all of a sudden you're some brainwashed fool, some shill for the government who's ultimately just taking part in their deception. We also went through the council culture phase where just because you disagree with someone's beliefs, you cancel everything that they do. Now, full disclosure, there's nothing wrong with being woke. There's nothing wrong with cancelling things that are evil. There's nothing wrong with making things look extremely good. But the problem lays and becomes a problem where we cannot take a picture anymore or post a picture online because it doesn't look perfect, the angles are not right, or we can't share something about our house, for example, because it doesn't look as good as the person down the road who's basically just posted their house tour or their house picture, etc. So think about this. We look at someone else's picture on Insta, right? And we say, look, this picture looks so great. When I post my picture, for those of you who use Instagram, right? you have to make sure your picture looks just as good as that picture, or for some reason it's not authentic, which makes no sense, because you have people on all different social platforms, right? I'm not sending shots at any social platform specifically. I've already said, right, we abuse these things in many ways and turn things that can be used for good and ultimately turn them bad. The fact of the matter is, many people on social media, because of the Photoshop phase, as I call it, and the Insta phase with the filters, we've got to a point in time where people not only like sharpen up, for example, or what one may say enhance something to look the best it can. Many of us have gone to stages now where we're basically fabricating, manipulating, misrepresenting the truth just so someone can hit thumbs up on one of our images or one of our videos, etc. You get the point, right? This is all in the guise of self, because we've been conditioned heavily into looking at what other people have and then desiring it. It's a clear sign, according to Paul, of the end times. And this is the sad irony. Many of us have been raised in a world where we only think about ourselves. But on the flip side, the irony is we also crave heavily what others have, because we see others' things so frequently, whether it is actually the things that they actually possess or it's just things they are presenting out there to basically make themselves look cool or the hip person, right, of the day. And we desire it and covet it, right? I did a community post on my channel recently where I was basically breaking down how the subscriber growth on my channel is exponential this year, but at the same time it's not enough. Why? Because I'm saying, look, it's easy when you're looking at other big Christian channels and you allow your mind to now tell yourself a story and say, look, you're just as good as them, and you may be just as good as them. But just because you may be as good as someone doesn't mean you deserve what they actually have at the present time. Why? Because if you haven't been putting in valuable work for as long as them, that is just one reason already why you most likely shouldn't have what they have, if not more. But the problem is, because we are so hell-bent on me, I may look at other people's channels that are growing and have grown rapidly, and I say to myself, now the 4x growth on my channel this year plus was not sufficient because so-and-so grew by XYZ numbers, which may not even be as big in proportion, but because you're dealing with bigger numbers, you allow the mind to basically convince you of why what you have isn't enough and why what someone else has is what you want. Can you see the cycle that we put ourselves in? More on that on the video coming soon, talking about that specific community post in more detail. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications. Now, number 3 is a really interesting one, and I've just basically highlighted this as backward emotions. Paul says it in Timothy like this: without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good. And if you recall earlier on in the video when I was talking about sign number 1 of the end times, I talked about the 50 million babies every year, right? And the crazy thing is, we now basically flip it on its head as mankind, and we basically turn around and say, look, it's not about the 50 million babies, it's about the women. And we basically create campaigns and basically empower them to the point where we say, you know what? It's all about the woman and the choice that she can make, opposed to the vulnerable, innocent baby. And the worst thing is not that we empower these people. The worst thing is when people like me come along and say, you know what? Let's think about the babies involved in this scenario. We get branded as hate preachers and bigots and people who do not care about women, which is the furthest thing from the truth. All I'm saying in this scenario is, I believe God knows best on this particular matter, and let's put the baby first. This whole backwards, not having natural affection is all widespread. We've talked about babies. I'll leave that for now and for another video in the future perhaps. But the fact of the matter is, let me give you another example. I talked about the post I made recently on my community tab. Another thing I can talk about is, look, I may spend days, right, time every single day worrying about why my videos are not getting more views or why I'm not bigger, yada yada yada. When the fact of the matter is, instead of wasting time on trivial vanity metrics, as they say, why not consider or think about the person who may be starving, right? Serious problems, not first world problems, as I like to say, and someone who may be persecuted because of the God that we believe in. When we start to put things into perspective, we realize how so often we are focusing on ourselves, going back to sign of the end times number 2, but tying up sign of the end times number 3 here, talking about lacking natural affection and ultimately hating that which is good. Think about this. When someone says, you know what, Israel, you were wrong, stop wasting time on these things that really do not matter, I don't say, why am I wrong? I may turn around and say, no, I cannot be wrong. It's impossible. And this goes to the point of the matter. We look at certain things and we think, you know what, this is involving me. It has to be important, when really in the bigger scheme of things, these things really do not matter that much. And more significant things that are actually going on, maybe even in close proximity to you, and definitely in certain parts of the world, there's heavy persecution of Christians in the east part of the world, right? If we spent more time thinking on things like that, it gives us perspective because it shows us where our heart is. The fourth end time sign that Paul gives us is ultimately people who are more focused on pleasuring themselves than ultimately pleasing and being acceptable in God's sight. In the last days, there will be traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. Sex is one of the main pleasures we indulge in without marriage, from the young even to the old. I remember one of the things my mom used to say to me when I was about 15 years old. She used to say to me, look, son, Israel, don't go out and basically engage yourself in different sexual activities. She used to say to me, you are not going to enjoy it. You don't know what you're doing. And did I listen? No. I said to myself, you know what does my mom know? Like, she doesn't get what's going on in today's day and age, etc. This is just normal, right? This is the norm. It was only years later, right, after the fact, when I realized, you know what, my mom was actually right. Because yes, you may know just the ABCs, but as you grow older, as you now get married, etc., you begin to realize why maybe waiting and taking some time would actually have been the best thing for you. But that doesn't stop us today from indulging heavily in sexual activity. It highlights that what the pleasures that we believe in, the pleasures that we want, ultimately mean more to us in many ways than the pleasures of pleasing God. You know, many nights in the past, I would basically spend the night watching TV shows and movies and just bathing in multiple forms of entertainment. And what if I just said at one point, you know what, let me just stop watching this last TV show. Let me save a 30-40 minute segment and spend more time, just that 30 to 40 minutes on one TV show out of the binge of the series, and make a video, a Bible teaching lesson, which can help you learn more about the Bible. The videos ultimately were fun. But what about the fact of the matter is, if I could make more videos for my Bible masters like you, who could actually learn how to read the Bible and apply the Bible to your day-to-day life. Just because something was fun doesn't necessarily mean that we should basically now ignore the things that we know God has gifted us with in order to help and please Him. You know, I used to love sports to the point where I'd basically become idolizing. You know, a few years back, right, not even too long ago, I was basically signed up to an NBA League Pass subscription. Now, just to give you some context to showcase how the pleasures of myself were ultimately overwriting the pleasures of pleasing God, right? I live in the UK. currently. And all of those games that I was watching multiple times a week started at a bare minimum for the majority of the year at 12 midnight at the earliest. And I would spend 3+ hours multiple times a night, staying up all day doing whatever I'm doing, obviously, and then ultimately deep into the night watching NBA games. And what if I just took one of those 3-hour blocks and said, you know what, I'm going to make 2 to 3 videos just like this, which can ultimately bless you and more people like you in regards to avoiding deception and mastering the Bible for yourself. This is why, if you are serious about avoiding deception and mastering your Bible at the same time, you should seriously consider picking up your copy of our free Bible Mastery Guide. It's free and it will help you and ultimately bless you in regards to your day-to-day walk. Number 5 arguably is the most vital. And this is where Paul's talking about those who basically seem like they're godly, but they really are not godly. He says, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. And what does he say? From such turn away. You know, in recent times, we've had big scandals hit the church. And how do you know who was genuine and actually just made a big mistake, or who was acting? I'm not here to say, look, this person is condemned and that person is not condemned, or to say this person is right and that person was not right. But the point I'm making is, if you are not really actively reading your Bible for yourself, it will be very hard for you to determine who's right and who's wrong. All 5 of these signs in regards to being in the end times, the last days, have ultimately been active and ongoing for nearly 2,000 years. In the last days, there will be many false preachers and many false teachers. If you want to know how to spot a false teacher or a false preacher a mile off, here are 15 different ways you can catch them with their hand in the cookie jar.